Okay.
All right, welcome to the show. I have a special guest with me, John MacWilliams. I'm going to let him introduce himself, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the Ducks and what's going on in the league, Arizona, Toronto, some news that you broke earlier, and Bettman and other things like that. But John, I figured I'd give you the floor. Thanks for coming on the show, and let everybody know a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Yeah. No, my pleasure. Thanks for having me here. Yeah, I'm a hockey lifer. Played the game a little bit. I didn't play it well, but I've had quite a bit of success in the development side. So I've worked probably for the last 30 years on specifically skating, but skills. So I've worked, all over Europe, U.S., Canada. I've had programs. I'm in Atlanta, Canada now, so I'm based in Halifax, and I got programs all over this area and work with the pro guys in the summer and the kids in the winter. And yeah, so I've had, Kale McCarr came through my program, Crosby, McKinnon, Marchand, a lot of Halifax guys. And yeah, quite a bit of success over the years. And, I'm happy to be here to talk hockey and, talk Anaheim Ducks.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a reminder, everybody, this is part of the Olde City Sports Network. I'll put all the sponsors in our description box throughout the show, and I'll mention them here and there. But yeah, let's get to the Ducks.
Sure.
Some interesting stuff in the off season. Some names were mentioned. They had talked about Andrew Burnett, Spencer Carberry, and Mike Bellucci as some of the names that are confirmed.
Yeah.
And then they mentioned Frank Cervelli mentioned 468 names interviewed. I don't know if that was kind of him joking around or he was being serious, but he posted that. But what are your thoughts on the Ducks coaching situation?
Yeah, they're doing a lot. From what I'm told, they're looking at a lot of assistants. So the names you mentioned, Carberry, Burnett, Brad Shaw, who's an assistant in Philly that they think is ready. Um, I don't think that's going to work. I think you got a young group there. I think you might see a return of an old coach that coached in Anaheim by the name of Mike Babcock. So Babcock is out there. He wants to coach again, and he been mentioned in New York. He won't be mentioned in Toronto, but any opening is going to mention him and or Joel Quenneville just because of the records that they have. So I'm thinking Anaheim would be a good fit for him. I don't see him coming back into a big market. Just I think he wants to stay a little low key based on how he went out. But I see Babcock or Laviolette is who I see in Anaheim. I think the kids. I have a little bit of a concern with the culture. It's you got a lot of young guys. There's a lot of cockiness going on, out there, and I think you almost need a hard ass guy to come in and basically teach these kids how to be pros. I think it was a tremendous loss when Getsy hung him up because he was absolutely nobody was fooling around in that room and not taking it seriously when he was around. And the coach that just left, I don't think he was the guy that was going to keep them. But a Babcock, a Laviolette, somebody that's been around and has had some success. I mean, this team's going to be a real good hockey team, right? But it's a culture thing. You got to teach these guys, some of the nuances away from the game. I get the Michigan stuff, but I'm one that I'm more of a traditionalist, and I'd rather see you wrap it around on the ice than show up a goalie on the other team. Perfect example is we talked before we came on about Connor Bedard, and in the first game of the World U20, so the World Junior Tournament here in Halifax, they lost to the Czech Republic 5-3. So Bedard and Fantilli both tried to Michigan and miss. Right? At the end of that game, I believe it was Shane Wright. Shane Wright showed a tremendous amount of leadership within that group, and he basically said, "We're not going to win anything doing Michigans, right? We have to play the game the right way." And then nobody else on that roster tried it again, and they ran the table. So I'm just like I said, I'm an old school guy. I have a 9-year-old son. He's learning how to scoop the puck up. Stuff like that. And he's, "Oh, Dad, I'm going to learn how to do the Michigan." And I'm like, "Well, that's great. I think it's tremendous to have that skill set." Having said that, try not to do it in the game. Why not, Dad? I said, well, because you're kind of showing up the goalie on the other team. And I think when I was playing, I probably might have buried a stick in the guy's head if he, that kind of thing. So I think that, and it's okay. I mean, there's tremendous. I mean, Zegras has a tremendous amount of skill. I think if they can harness that, and I just get the impression sometimes he's just a little bit too loosey goosey. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. He's smiling out there, and your team's 15 games under 500. To me, I think they need somebody in there to say, hey, you know what? We're going to be a real good team down the road, but we got to learn how to play the right way and do the right thing. So that's my opinion on the coach. That's what I do. I would certainly bring in somebody that's going to be able to, and that person probably isn't going to be long term, right? Most of those guys that fit that mold, John Tortorella, Daryl Sutter, guys like that don't last. They just don't anymore in the new game, right? But they can go in and fix the culture in a year and a half, 2 years before they get fired for being tuned out, and then you bring in somebody, maybe one of these young guys that can execute, right? But I would look at all the guys that they're looking at as head coaches as possible. Bring in a veteran coach and bring in one or two of those guys as assistants with a succession plan that this guy's going to be here for a couple of years and then the team grows. So that's where I'd go.
Do you think, they brought in Matt McIlvaine to the goals and there was talk about him maybe coming up later on? Do you think that could be part of it? Maybe he's down there with the goals for 2 or 3 years. They bring in someone, senior, like you're talking about, to kind of get the team going even more in the right direction. And then McIlvaine comes in.
Yeah, and what you have to do is, I mean, the teams are so close, right? San Diego and Anaheim, and I'm a big believer in culture and development models within your organization. So whoever they bring in, to coach Anaheim needs to be in constant communication with the American Hockey League coach. You want to run the same systems. You want to run the same similar practices. This little thing. You want to have similar routines, as far as on a travel day. What time do we skate in the morning? When do we have a team dinner? When do we eat? Because what you do is you make that sort of up and down between the American League and the National Hockey League a lot less complicated, right? The guy comes in and he knows the system. You got an emergency call up on a Saturday night, and the guy can come in. He knows how we play, right? He knows where he's supposed to be in all the different situations. And so you got to kind of build that culture within the whole organization, and it's invaluable, right? And then absolutely, so you have him coach there for a couple of years, then come up as an assistant. Basically when the other guy's on his way out to get to know the guys, right? But with the young prospects coming in, holy smokes! I mean, it's going to have. I'll go out there right now and say in 3 years they're going to have the best defense corps in the National Hockey League by far. Because you're going to have 4 or 5 guys on entry-level deals, right? Making $1 million a year and top end players, right? Olin Zellweger, he was on that team with Bedard. He's a real deal. He's going to win a Norris Trophy, right? He's that good. Then you got Minchikov, Luno, and Hines.
Yeah,
They're all leaders. I mean, you're talking the drafting down there has been incredible. From the back end. That's how you win, right? It's your defense core that makes you win. And look at all the teams that have won in the last 20 years. They've had stud defensemen and deep defense, right? So you're not in any trouble there. I'm excited for you guys going in for sure. What else you got for me?
Yeah, I mean, the blue line's kind of weak for the Ducks right now, right? I mean, you have Drysdale that he actually just came off the IR officially this week, so everybody was excited about that. He's back. You have Fowler. Then there's kind of a drop-off. You have Vakanainen in there. You have a couple plugins in there. So do you see the Ducks trying to go get, another top 4 defenseman at least this summer? Because like you were talking about, we've talked about on our show too, is you have these young guys coming up. The blue line's going to be fantastic, but it's going to take a couple of years. So do you see the Ducks trying to go either trade for somebody or try to get somebody in the summer that's a free agent, because the top 4, I mean, you really got top 2, maybe top 3. I mean, it's kind of weak on the blue line.
And Fowler's going to be done before these kids are ready, right?
Right.
He's going to be a mentor guy, but I absolutely agree with you. I think somebody like a Luke Shen, somebody that's a veteran, A little bit on the physical side, somebody that can look after these kids needs to kind of mentor them, show them again how to be a pro. But I don't want them to bring on maybe Zellweger, but I think the rest of them need to spend some time in the minors. I think it's more important as a defenseman, and Anaheim's always had that philosophy. You go back to Pears and Getsy coming up. Those two guys are Hall of Famers, and they spent a year or two in the minors. But a defenseman, 100%. I think maybe Zellweger would be the only one that I'd bring right in, but the rest of them, I'd have them prove how you can be a pro. So yes, bring in a veteran, maybe two, to kind of get these guys, but it's got to be a leadership guy. I don't, the skill set and the way he's going to be on the ice is far less important to me than how he's going to be with the kids, how he's going to, he's going to take the rookies out to dinner. Is he going to, stay late after practice to work on something, that kind of stuff. That's what you need. You need some mentors.
Well, you touched on that too earlier. You talked about, Getzlaf being gone. Another thing that some people talked about this last season, they had, 3 alternate captains. How do you think that plays out? Because like you said, you have these young guys, they have a little bit of extra energy in there. Like you said, a little bit flash and dash, smile, those kind of things. I kind of felt like that too. I felt like if Getzlaf was there this year, they could have mentioned him a little bit more. I mean, hats off to him. He wanted to retire. He had a great career. He's got to do what he wants to do. But what do you think as far as this next season? Do you see the Ducks trying to have someone as a captain, or do you see the role with 3 alternates again? Which to me, I don't like that, especially when you have a young team that needs somebody that's the dad of the team or the leader of the team.
Mason McTavish is going to be the captain there. He's going to be the guy. He's just a leader through and through. He plays the game the right way. He goes in. I'm sure he's already talked to the Zegras of the world about some of the antics, because he's a pro. That kid's coming up and he's coming in there, and he'll demand and command respect. I would expect, they might go and alternate A's next year to make sure, but I would expect that Mason McTavish will get named captain by Christmas. He's the leader of that organization already. Yeah. What is he, 21? 20?
Yeah, a lot of the guys are in the early 20s, young kids. Yeah, for sure.
He reminds me of a young John Taze, honestly, is what he reminds me of, right? Plays honest, hard.
Yeah.
Got a real good skill set to go with it. He's going to be the captain there. Yeah. And Zellweger will be a leader there as well. He's going to be a leader there for a long time.
Yeah, Mason really emerged this last year, especially on the power play. I joke, I say like he sets up in his office, kind of like Teemu did, takes those one-timers, was killing on the power play. He was up there. He wasn't in contention for Rookie of the Year, but he was still up there, doing a great job. And like you said, he works very, very hard, and I think that's a huge thing with him. And he's not as flashy. He scores his goals. He does what he needs to do. He's got energy and excitement. But I could see that, like you were saying. The other one I thought maybe possibly would be a Troy Terry.
Yeah, I could too. I think he'll be in the leadership group for sure. But I don't see Terry even close to having the leadership qualities that I would look for. Everybody's different. I'm a little bit older school than some of the managers even that are in the game now. But I'm looking for a guy that's well-rounded. Not necessarily my best guy. A guy that's going to be on the ice in a lot of different situations. Obviously, McTavish fits that bill, and a guy that plays the game the right way. A guy that's always on the right side of the puck, always doesn't miss his assignments very much. And if you watch McTavish and kind of single in on him during a hockey game, he's in the right spot. He really is. So that's where I'd go. But remains to be seen. But it's going to be whoever they bring in as a coach. Going to make that decision, and probably after training camp.
Yeah, and I think the coach, like you talked about too, Verbeek, the quote little ball of hate. He's old school. He did talk about his big thing is he wants the team to be difficult to play against, which let's be honest, the Ducks were not difficult to play against last year. You had Gibson taking 40+ shots a night. The blue line was a mess. Yeah, there were some injuries, but the blue line was still a mess. and the offense was spotty. The power play was a little bit better than the year before, maybe. But overall, it was a rough season. We all know that. I mean, it is what it is. I think the only thing is the recycle direction. I don't know how much the fans will stomach it, because they did that with Carlisle and it didn't work. So I don't know if Babcock. I mean, it may work out with the team, it may work out with the players, like you said. But I know I posted some stuff about that on there, and they were like, Babcock, like, hell no, we don't want him back again. But I mean, if he's a transition guy, maybe it works then, John.
Yeah, give him a 2-year deal, and then he can move on if he can show the rest of the league that he can coach again. And that his behavior. It was his behavior that was the issue, right? He played some mind games. He did some pretty unethical things, in my opinion. Sitting guys when they're about to play the 1,000th game, or they got 100 people in town and it's a nothing game, that kind of stuff. And he did some pretty shitty things to Mitch Marner when he was a rookie here. I don't know if you heard that story, but basically had him, tell which guys work the hardest and work the least hard, and then shared that information. So he's an old school guy though, right? A lot of those guys kind of got ran out of the game here a few years ago. And hopefully they come in and I think he's there, or Columbus is the two places that I think that.
Okay,
one of those two places.
Well, speaking of the young talent too, so we had the draft lottery, and we had a lot of drama with that. We talked about it on our last show with me and Eddie. But the Ducks ended up second. Just kind of get your thoughts on what you think the Ducks will, do you think they take Fantilli? Do you think they take Carlson? People were talking about that. Will Smith's name has been thrown in there too. Now, where do you see, assuming Chicago takes Bedard, which is what we think, do you see the Ducks taking Fantilli or Carlson, or what do you think?
I think if I'm the Ducks, honestly, I'm taking Mitchkov, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
They're not going to be ready for about 3 years, right?
Right.
Mitchkov, from what I'm told from my contacts in Eastern Europe,
right,
that this kid's every bit as good as Bedard, right? Any other year, this kid's a first overall pick.
Right.
If he was a Canadian or an American or a Swede, it's not a slam dunk that Connor Bedard's going. So Anaheim fits that bill to me. One of the first kind of, I think they're as far away as anybody except Phoenix from contending. Like I said, the defense core needs a couple of years to get comfortable with the game and the speed of the game. They got to fix the culture and get the right group in there. Once they do that, Mitchkov will be ready. He's probably going to lead the KHL in scoring for the next 2 or 3 years. Like, he's unbelievable. So Anaheim, I would probably, and you don't have to take him at 2. So I'd get an asset and drop to 4 or 5 and let those other guys go, because some of those teams think they're better than they are. Right? I think Verbeek knows what he's got. He's been around the game long enough to not think that he's going to contend next year or the year after. Your minimum 3. That's when that kid's coming. Right? He signed for, I think, 3 more in Russia. He is coming to the draft, which is a tremendous sign that he's excited. But that's where I'd go with him. But the other 3 that you mentioned, I mean, Fantilli could be a first overall in both drafts. Other than when McDavid or Bedard or Matthews or something like that, you're going to get an unbelievable player right there. But you might be able to get an asset. You might be able to actually get another first rounder and still get Mitchkov by dropping. But that's what I'd be exploring right now. But sometimes it's a roll of a dice too, because if you think another guy's taking somebody and then all of a sudden you drop that back to 5, and then somebody else takes Mitchkov, but guess what? There's still going to be a good guy there, and you're getting an asset, right? This team has to draft the best player available. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of holes in the lineup, and I think 100% whether the guy's going to be signed in Russia for a few years or not, you got to take the best guy available to kind of enhance his rebuild. And that's the way I'd go. But if not, probably Fantilli for sure. If they don't want to go that route, Fantilli would be. He's a great player. You know, we were talking, I was on the Ranger show there yesterday, and we were talking about, we had a long talk about Alexis Lafreniere. The pressure that he got going to one of the Rangers. He'd be about 9 this year in that draft.
Mm-hmm.
That was a very weak draft that he came in. And it's unfortunate that he went to New York because, the pressure of playing in that city is no different than Toronto, Montreal, Chicago, right? Detroit, some of those, original Boston. And he, he got set up to fail, right? He goes in there and everybody, he's the number 1 overall pick. He's going to be like, Matthews or McDavid. Right. No, that was a bad draft. So, but I mean, you're going to get a great player. Bedard would have been huge. Would have changed the franchise. Wouldn't have sped it up any though. And that's not going to make you a contender next year or the year after. I think Verbeek's building it the right way, obviously from the back end. Goaltending is going to be, a question here. Is Gibson going to be the guy in 3 years? Probably not. Right? It's you're going to have to start to look at your younger prospects and look at, in the 3rd or 4th round, going on a flyer and taking a goalie that, maybe has a real good frame and some success, but not rated real high, and trust in your goalie program that you have and the development side and try to find a diamond in the rough like that.
Yeah, the goalie thing has been interesting because they keep talking about trading Gibson. A lot of fans are annoyed by this because it's gone on for the last couple seasons now, and they're wondering what's going to happen. They had a season ticket holder event that I went to where Verbeek said, "Hey, I don't want to trade Gibson unless I have another number 1 goalie ready to go." And it kind of interesting because I wonder how much does he think Dostal will be a number 1 type goalie? Will he be the guy to go in there and you trade Gibson and you try to get if you don't get another number 1 goalie in return, do you try to get a top defenseman, right? Because we're talking about building up the blue line, the back end of the team and fixing it. I'm just really curious. I don't know if he thinks Dostal's ready to take over that role or not. We did see a lot more of him in the second half of the season, which was good. And I mean, he's a great goalie, but I'm just kind of curious your take on that. Do you think Dostal's the guy that could take over that role? Or do you think?
Yeah, but I think you need either a veteran guy or another young guy like him that's prove himself kind of happen, right? You want to throw it out there and say, hey, you know what, that's available. We're going to move Gibson. And in the Gibson deal, any transaction for Gibson, and here's my prediction with Gibson. Either he's going to go between now and the draft, like draft day, that kind of thing, in some sort of a transaction, or it'll be very close to the deadline, right? And then they can drive the price up. But I think his price right now is really high. I know he has a 10-team list. I don't know who's on it. Do you know who's on his 10 team? It's speculation anyway. They're not going to tell you the truth. Yeah. But the teams that I see a fit, a lot of them are in the Atlantic Division, right? Buffalo, Detroit, Toronto, Ottawa, right? Those are teams that will look seriously, even right now or the deadline, depending on how they're doing, right? He's still got in my opinion, he's got 2 or 3 years left. I think he deserves. I think if he goes to Verbeek and says, "Hey, you know what? I know what we're rebuilding here. I want to win. I don't have a chance." Right. They're going to do him right. The other 2 teams outside the Atlantic that I see, and the first one is a huge possibility, is Edmonton Oilers. Right? They got killed in the playoffs this year. They thought they had what they had, and they didn't. Goaltending was hot and cold. They need that veteran presence, right? Jack Campbell just wasn't it. Hate to say it, I like the guy, but he didn't do his job, and I don't think the coach did his job not playing Campbell in Game 6, right after the numbers that he put up. And the other one's Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh would always look at a guy like Gibson. So I think there's a deal out there, but I would bring in somebody either, and I know somebody like a Cam Talbot, right? That's been around, that can maybe mentor a kid, doesn't need to play a lot, or somebody else young that's on an entry-level deal that you can turn around and say, hey, you know what? You guys, that's yours. You guys, whoever rolls with it. That's how I would handle that one.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting situation. How they're going to try to do that. If they're going to, I don't know. I think they're just kind of stuck. I don't know. And I know that, like you mentioned, Pittsburgh has been brought up a few times too,
Yeah.
as a team, and he's got family out there, so that's another one that could be a situation. I just think the biggest thing they've got to figure out is who is the guy? Is it someone that they're going to go get, or is it Dostal they're going to bring up? But you're right. Even if you say, okay, if you're going to bring up Dostal, then I agree with you. Like, who's going to be the guy that's going to be there to mentor him? Who's going to come up there and help him? Because if you have him in there doing the job, that's fine. But I think I think the theme kind of that we've talked about with this team is mentorship. I think there's not a mentor as far as a team captain. Obviously, there's no coach yet. We got to figure that out too. But you're right. If you do go with Gibson now in the summertime, which is what some have talked about, or next season, then you need someone that's going to mentor whoever you're bringing in. Unless you're bringing in another senior goalie from another team, then maybe not. But I think that's a big part of this, and getting the team in the right direction is the leadership. Like you said, the talent is there. There's more talent coming. It's exciting times. I'm with you. I think the team is maybe 2-3 years away from making the playoffs and actually maybe not being a contending team, but having some kind of threat, getting in there and making some noise. And I think that's a huge part of this is what are they going to do with him? I felt bad this last season. I felt like Gibson just got broken down. I mean, you faced the most shots in the history of the league since they recorded the shots. I can't remember when that was, but it was way back when, and they recorded. I mean, that's ridiculous. And anybody that's a goalie, I mean, you're gonna get worn out. But I think his value is still pretty high, like you said. Another player they talked about is Comtois maybe going the summer. And then they also talked about there's been some other reports out there, and these names have been out there before, but Silverberg and Henrique, they both got $5 million deals. Rumors of Silverberg going back to Sweden at the end of next year.
And that's for him to release that screwed them, because now his value is nothing, right?
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Value is nothing, because now you're going to get him for this year. It'd be a pure rental with no chance if he's going back to Sweden. Henrique's a different story. I think he's in a similar boat as Gibson. If you can get a young player and a draft pick, I think again it won't be either it's in the next 6 weeks, or it's after Christmas sometime between them and the deadline, because you want to showcase him a little bit. I mean, he's a valuable guy to your dressing room. He's another veteran leader that can basically help with some of these kids. But I would question also, I think he should have been maybe one of the guys that stepped up. Him and Fowler should have been the ones that have already started to fix this culture, because they played with, some pretty profound leaders. And I didn't see that. I didn't watch Anaheim a lot, mind you, because there's a big time difference. But I tape a lot of games. I didn't see that this year. But he's Henrique's Henrique, right? He's going to help whoever he is. Great hockey player, has had a great career. And I think they can get some real good assets for sure. But you gotta, it's a roll of dice. Do you do it now if you like the package, or do you say, man, if they're going to give me that now, what are they going to give me when they need that guy and they got some injuries at the deadline? So you got to find that sweet spot, and but it's not going to hurt them to hold on to him until and going back to the goalie thing, it doesn't matter. You need to figure out who's going to be your goalie in 3 years.
Right.
This team's not going to win. So if you play 8 goalies this year to try to find one that maybe is the guy, and start to give some guys in your system some opportunities. Sign a couple free agent goalies, right? And bury them in the East Coast League somewhere. Let them play a lot of games. I'm not a big believer in goaltending being crucial to win a Stanley Cup anymore. I mean, other than the Tampa teams, it's been kind of marginal goalies that have won lately, other than Vasilevsky, right? Nobody's had that true stud number one, like a Carey Price or Vasilevsky. Vasilevsky's the only one. And then the other thing I've always said, and I'm in a development game. I'm not at all on the goalie side, but done some camps and stuff with some guys that are. And I'm a big believer that if you're playing NC2A Division I college and you're a starting goaltender, if you're playing Major Junior in the Quebec League, Western League, or Ontario League, and you're a starting goaltender, you have the tools and the skill set to play in the National Hockey League and be a starting goaltender. It's what's between the 2 years, right? There's 75, 80 goalies out there that can physically, they have the tools to play in the National Hockey League. It's the guy that can, take a getting pumped 8 goose and not let that affect his next game. Those are the guys that make it, the mentally strong kids. So if you got to go through 8 or 10 of them in the next couple of years to figure out who's your guy, do it, right? Absolutely. You never play to lose, but Verbeek knows what Anaheim is, and it's going to be a real good hockey club in 2 or 3 years. So you got to build towards that.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's the thing. This is a couple years away, like you said, and then you got to figure it out. I mean, the big thing too is the blue line too. I mean, you could have a stud goalie, i.e., John Gibson, and then you have a terrible blue line, and you saw what happened last year. But then you can have a fantastic blue line and have a goalie that's good, maybe not stellar, like you said, and you can still make a good solid run.
100%. Yeah, 100%. And yeah, I mean, Silverberg, good, another useful player for sure. But I think he'll get moved.
Yeah,
what's Fowler's deal?
I have to look, but I'm trying to remember. I want to say it's around 6 million.
6.5.
Yeah, 6.5 for a couple more years. Yeah.
So he'd be a guy may move out too. Sometimes when Anaheim was a veteran team for a while there, and Getzey got up there, and Pears was still there, and they came close. They had some good. They had chances in the playoffs, and they never, they came up a little short. But I truly believe when you do this big rebuild, sometimes it's getting the guys out of the system that have kind of been around through some bad stuff, and maybe and sometimes in the market like you're in, it can be easy to kind of fade into the you know what, I'm gonna go surfing today, or I'm gonna go golfing. You know what I mean? And I think maybe you change that whole, try to get a couple of those veteran guys. If you can get assets for them and build a group of kids, right? And with a guy like McTavish kind of leading the way, and Olin Zellweger, and you're going to bring in a winning atmosphere real quick when you're bringing in winners, right? And a lot of these kids that are coming in are winners. So
yeah, I agree with you. All right, that'll kind of wrap up the Ducks part. We'll talk a little bit about the league too. Sure. Just want to remind everybody we're part of the Olde City Sports Network. Yeah, one of the sponsors is Norse Beards. Check them out for our grooming needs. OCSN is the code for a discount. So Norse Beards for different grooming needs. All right, so kind of talk a little bit about the league. You had some news. We can kind of start, I guess, with Toronto talking shakeups. You put some stuff, and then that came to fruition. So another team that's going to have a crazy summer is the Toronto Leafs, John.
They are, yeah. So I broke yesterday. I heard through one of my contacts that talks fell off with Kyle Dubas, and that Sheldon Keefe and his staff were going to be released. So I tweeted it and posted it on our socials, and a lot of heat. Oh, how do you know that? Well, I'm not going to say it if I don't know it. So they're called sources because you don't have to go and say who they are. Anyway, so that happened. So, and Shanny had a press conference this afternoon, and basically, I think what it came down to, if you read between the lines, it was his demeanor in the press conference, right?
Yeah.
The getaway day there, he comes in and he's like, well, I don't know, I got to talk to my family. He looked defeated, right? So they had a offer on the table for him at that point, and I already told them they're dealing with his agent, blah, 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 blah. He said, okay, yeah, I got to go home and talk to my wife. And then there was an offer, and then there was a counter offer that came back from the agent. And the Leaf guys, the brass, Shanny and the ownership, basically they didn't like the body language that he protruded in the press conference, and he looked defeated, and they decided to move on. I heard this yesterday that it was a very good possibility, but it's confirmed now. So yeah, I mean, it does change a lot. So I think the core four is going to get broke up. You know, I'm hearing, there's two front runners for the general manager's job, and then one internal that they'll take a hard look at. But Brad Treliving out of Calgary, I think Calgary's blocking him from interviewing anywhere, but there's ways to circumvent that, as you know. You could have a deal in place. And Brandon Pridham, who's assistant, he's their cap specialist and an analytics guy. He can run this draft. That's not a problem. The other guy that I think, and it depends on how London Knights do tonight, but I have a strong feeling that they're going to go after Dale and Mark Hunter as a combo coach and general manager. Mark was an assistant GM, and they picked Dubas over him. They own the London Knights, of course, and manage and coach the London Knights. Tremendously successful junior program. Of course, they both played in the NHL. Shanahan had played for the London Knights. Their backs against the wall against the Peterborough Petes right now. So they play tonight in London, Game 5 in the Ontario Hockey League Championship. And if Peterborough wins in London's barn, now those guys are done. And I think you're going to see some talks heat up. I don't think it's imminent. I don't think they need to put somebody in place as a general manager right away, just based on Pridham, and he'd be the third guy. If they don't get it like what they see, when they interview these other guys, I think Pridham is going to get certainly a shot. I don't see anybody else out there that makes sense at this point. And I think you're going to see Jason Spezza get a much bigger role within the organization. So he was a special advisor to Dubas last year. I think he'll be at the very least an assistant general manager.
What do you think about Matthews? Because that's been brought up. Do you think he's going to stay? You think there's going to be some movement with him?
I thought he was going to stay if Dubas stayed. Right, okay. Him and Dubas are quite close. I think this is a big shift. So what I would have thought, if Dubas was coming back, I honestly, and people are arguing about it and all over the place. I think Marner was going to go. I think they would have found somebody to pay big for Mitch Marner, and I think he's a top 6 or 7 player in the league. Because Matthews is he's a generation. He's one of those guys that, if you give up on a guy like that, it may bite you. If he wants to leave, he wants to leave. He tells him he's going, then you move him and you get what you can, right? You don't want to see the Kachuk and Johnny Gaudreau out of Calgary last year. But if he wants to sign, and I think you move Marner, I think William Nylander is the best bang for the buck in the National Hockey League. He makes 6.9. He has 40 goals, 80 points. He's the best player in the playoffs. And John Tavares has a no movement. You can't touch him. You got to buy him out. And, I don't think he's worth the 10-8 or whatever it is, 11 that he's making. But there's not much you can do about that. So unfortunately, it's going to turn into Marner, and I think he'll go west. That might be somebody that Anaheim would look at to come in and take over some leadership, that kind of stuff, right? 26, I think now. But, so he'll be 29 in his prime when they're ready, when those D-core come out. So that could be someone they would be a good. They've got assets for sure that Toronto would be interested in. Almost have a plethora of defensemen that that you could include. I mean, you're getting a world-class player like that. That's kind of he has no control over where he goes at this point. He's got 2 full years left on the field. So if you're confident in the team that you're building, you trade for him, and you make it a place, a destination that he wants to sign for long term.
Yeah, I mean, so the Ducks have traded with Toronto before too, so some of those names have come up. So I'm curious to see with this shakeup, obviously what happens with the Ducks and what happens with the Maple Leafs this summer. Kind of another situation, I guess we could talk about. Kind of another team like even more crazy would be the Arizona Coyotes. Just they had the vote. The votes didn't go their way. There's a lot of talk about all these places that they could end up. They've talked about San Diego. They've talked about Utah. Quebec coming back. They had the Nordiques up there. I mean, have you seen anything or heard anything with Arizona? I mean, they're in just a really crazy situation right now.
Yeah, it is, and I spent a few years down there. I was working in hockey down in Tucson, and I did a lot of stuff with the Coyotes development side. Yeah, they never drew, right? The only teams that would draw were Detroit, Chicago, Toronto, Montreal, right? Original six teams that people, the snowbirds that live in, the older people grew up watching. So, unfortunately, it should have been. This is, I'll segue this into my Gary Bettman stuff. But
Yeah, go for it.
absolutely, it's a debacle. It shouldn't have gone this far. They need to move. I think the right thing to do. I know all these other markets are popping up. I believe the right thing to do is go back to Quebec City. They're selling 18,000 for a junior game there consistently in the playoffs. They've got a rink ready that you can literally move tomorrow, and you're playing, and there's no other than a little bit of a divisional alignment. I'd move Detroit back to the west and create some natural rivalries with St. Louis and Chicago and Colorado, right? Put them back in the west, seamless. Quebec, and now you look at these other markets. Get the expansion money, right? Get the expansion money. So you go to 36. I'm fine with it. If there's 36 markets that can sustain the NHL, do it. So put four teams, two, maybe one more in the East, or flip it around and go in. Yeah, I have no problem trying in Houston. I got a little bit of an issue with Atlanta because it's failed twice.
Right.
Kansas City's failed once, but I'd go Houston for sure, big market. I'd go Salt Lake City, absolutely. I don't think I'd go San Diego.
No,
I just don't think it works. I don't think I'd go Sacramento. I don't think it works. I would go Portland. I would go Portland in the Pacific Northwest. And then on the east side, really, there's no real standouts. So you'd have to move some teams around, and then Detroit goes back to the east, and maybe St. Louis goes to the east, right? And then you got 18 and 18. You could have if you had 36, you could have three divisions of 12. You could have an east, a west, and a central, and do some goofy things with the playoff seedings. That come in and just go 116, 215 league wide. That's possible too. But they can't do this. This is embarrassing for the league, the players. I mean, one of the kids, Clayton Keller's dad's tweeting that he's not going to be there. He's holding out.
I saw that.
So I'm done, right? Which is pretty. And then is it Logan Cooley? He announced today he's going back for his junior year to Minnesota. He was coming out 100%.
Yeah.
Right. Because Nyes, right? That team's not going to be that good. Nyes stayed because they were that good. Now Nyes is up, and then Cooley has just said, "Yeah, I'm not going there. I play for more people. I play in front of more people in Minnesota than I would in the National Hockey League, college hockey, right? 5,000 people. It's embarrassing." And Bettman's fingerprints are all over it. So that, coupled with, I think the officiating has been very poor. I haven't seen officiating this poor in my whole career playing and following hockey, so 50 years. I haven't seen the inconsistency of the calls. I haven't seen almost like, and there's cameras. I just don't get it. I believe that the reffing is so bad they almost have to have the ability to review everything.
Yeah.
Because you can review a goal, you can review goalie interference, you can an offside. But somebody whacks you across the face with a stick and you got three teeth hanging out and you're bleeding and the ref doesn't call it. I can't call say I want to go upstairs on that because you're going to see that guy whacked my guy in the face. Right? Yeah. What's called tonight isn't called tomorrow night. Department of Player Safety is part of this too. What's a suspension? Because I could do something to you right now, and then tomorrow night you do the same thing back to me, and you get nothing, and I'm gone for 3 games, right? So it's a joke, right? The players are even talking about. They're taking fines now. They're going, I don't care. Fine me the 25,000. This refereeing was horseshit, and in more games than less, there's an issue. And it's not one-sided ref. Nobody's cheating or trying to let this team win or that team win. That's not what it is, but it's just, I think it's accountability. I don't think referees are held to the same standard. Certainly the players and the teams are within the league. They can kind of, you know what, their performance isn't indicative of the job assignments, right? It's kind of a who deal. So that, and then like I said about the player safety, and then just Bettman. I think it's time. The TV lack of a deal in the U.S. I mean, it's a joke. It's fractions for what Sportsnet's paying in Canada. Fractions, and you've got 10 times as many people. It doesn't make any sense, right? So I think they're going to push him out. I think by the end of the season, you'll hear that he's going to announce, or the season coming up. I think at one point and I don't think it'll be a big road show. I think it'll be close to the playoffs, and they'll say, they'll do a press conference, and I've decided to retire. That's being pushed out. Bettman ain't retiring. If that happens, and I believe it will, he's the ownership has come together, and they'll let him go with dignity and say I'm retired. Mm-hmm. Rather than saying we're getting rid of him. Why would you do that at this point? He's done a lot of good things for the league, right? The revenues are good, for the most part. He navigated through COVID. That was very, very difficult thing to do, and running a professional sports league, and he didn't miss any playoffs, right? He got the Stanley Cup one. That's tremendous. So anyway, so that's kind of my take on that stuff. Everything else from the league wide stuff?
Yeah, I think the thing that bothers me, like you were talking about Bettman, is I think some of the teams you can't always see, like in the US, you can't always see your team. For example, like you have to have a certain plan to watch this team. Then you have to have a plan to watch this team. And then even with the Ducks have the Duck Stream, which is very good. A lot of podcasts, a lot of information, but they're no longer on AM, FM radio. So it's like, right. I mean, you're and I talk with some people within the organization about this too. And it's like, why not try to expand your outlets, get more fans pulled in, bring in new fans, instead of like, well, you have to pay for this service to listen. You have to pay for this service or subscribe or whatever it is, which I don't know. It just seems a little bit frustrating because it seems to narrow the fan base a little bit. And then my big beef with the draft lottery is I don't understand why it's not live. It's recorded. It was on YouTube. I found it afterwards, but that's a huge, to me, missed marketing opportunity. You make it live, you throw all your sponsors on there, you blow it up, you make it a half an hour production like you do the NHL awards in Vegas. Like, I mean, there's a lot of things you can do. And it's just weird to me that they pre-record it and then they put it on YouTube, but then they don't talk about it on Twitter or Facebook or anything else. Like, I don't know. To me, it just seems like a missed opportunity that you could really blow it up and be like, hey, here we're going. We're going through the first draw and the second draw. And then, you could combine it like they did on the ESPN show where they flip the cards too. I mean, there's ways to do it to make it very, very exciting. I don't know. To me, that's frustrating. I mean, he has done good things, like you said, doing the expansion thing, navigating COVID was crazy. That was insane. And having to redo the divisions and having the Canada and US and all that. I mean, he did a fantastic job with that. But I am curious to see when the time is up with him. And if it is this next year, like you said, I mean, I'm with you. I do think it's time. Some of those things I don't like. And the player safety thing, I think there's a couple issues there too. A lot of people don't like the inconsistency with the way things are called, like you said. Right. But there's also some rules that are a little bit vague, like what's goalie interference? Like last night we had that in the quadruple overtime game with Carolina, Florida. People were arguing about that called back early when Florida scored, because you see him get pushed in to Anderson. There is some contact. I saw it both ways. I mean, I was like, well, he was pushed in there, but then Anderson kind of got out of position, and then they argue about goalie interference nonstop. That's like a big one. The kicking thing used to be a big thing too with Ducks. That would happen a lot.
Putting the crease from 2099, right?
Right, that whole thing. And then of course now we have the replay of the offside. So I see that as like kind of twofold. I think there's inconsistency, absolutely, like you said, but I think some of the rules need to be a little bit revamped too. I don't know. That's just some of my gripes is player safety. and then
Yeah.
the availability of the of media access to watching and listening to the teams.
Yeah. And they have to do that paper stuff in the States because the teams don't get any TV money. Up here, like just what Sportsnet or TSN pays the Leafs is crazy, right? The revenue that they generate just from that. And they still I have so we have Sportsnet, and there's West, Pacific, Ontario, and East. So being East, I used to live in Saskatchewan, and we would have I would get every on just my local package, right? No, I didn't have to buy anything else, and I'd get Calgary, Edmonton, or Winnipeg because we're right in the middle of the three of them. Out here, we get Ottawa, right? Ontario, they get Toronto. So any Toronto games on, they get to see it because that's their local market. But I pay, I think, $180 a year or something like that, and I can watch everything. So that's $180, and that's for the whole year. And it doesn't matter the market, time of day, it's blocked out. I watch everything. Yeah. So but it's tough, and I think I just think it's time. I'd like to see a hockey guy in there.
Yeah.
And I think Daly will be a front runner. But I'd like to see maybe Brian Burke. Honestly, Brian Burke would be a real good fit because he's got that law, and he's worked for the league before, and he's just he's one of those guys, right? That I think that he's probably got 5 or 10 years left. I think it'd be a good fit. So,
yeah, I think you're right. I think Berkey would be a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of wraps up everything I had on our show. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add or discuss or anything else around the league as we kind of wind it up here.
Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about my show on the Olde City Sports Network. So I got a show called Road to the Show, and it's a kind of a magazine. I sit down every Sunday night, and I have a one-on-one interview with somebody in the sport. Right, and we've had David Bowen from the Stanley Cup Blackhawks to Brian Propp, old Philadelphia Flyer. I've had Ian Duncan, an old Winnipeg Jet. And some of the guys that I bring on are my friends, that people that I've known for years, and then some people that I'm just meeting. So this Sunday, for example, we've got Gilbert Dion. Obviously Marcel's little brother, played in the NHL, won a cup in Montreal, played for Philly, played for Florida. Real funny guy. He's gonna have some good stories, and so that's Road to the Show pod, and we're on the Olde City Sports Network. So you can watch that live. Tune in on Spotify.
Is there a website? Like for us, it's DucksNPucks.com. Is there a Road to the Show?
Yeah, we don't have a website. It's on Facebook, Road to the Show.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Very cool. So I'm glad we were able to do this. Again, yeah, we're all part of the Olde City Sports Network, so you can check out all the shows on there. Like I mentioned, you can check out Ducks and Pucks as well for our articles and podcasts as well. So thanks for coming on, John. I look forward to maybe doing another show in the future with you as well.
Absolutely, love it. Yeah, thanks for having me. Have a good night.